Hello everybody, my name is Klangrausch and welcome to my new production tutorial, Club Track Arrangement, Turning Ideas into Full Songs. So today it's all about arranging, and arranging is very important for a lot of guys out there which have really nice ideas for their tracks, but they don't really know how to arrange them to make them work in the club. So before we start, I would like to give you a short definition of what arranging is. Arranging actually can broadly be defined as the process of transforming musical ideas into complete tracks. And it can involve everything from writing harmonies, rearranging parts, adding or removing parts, planning the overall structure of a song, or even adding effects from time to time. So let's do this. Okay, the first part of my video tutorial about club track arrangement will be about the intro of a track. Let me first say some general things. So there are some different styles of arrangement. The most common arrangement is you have an intro. Okay, it's not written here, but I'll say it to you now. At the beginning you have an intro. When the intro ends you have a break, and then comes the main part. For example, here is the break, then comes the main part. Then will be a second break. As you can see here, there's the main part and the second break. And then comes the second main part, which is here, for example, and then at the end comes the outro. There are some other ways to do it. For example, you could start with an intro and then directly go into the main part, which is quite uncommon, I think. As you will hear later when I will show you, this banana split has this specific way of arranging. These other two tracks do it, as I said before. Concerning the arrangement, the different parts, you can say that house tunes or electronic music generally progresses in 16-bar sections. These sections are, as you can see, the bits or the parts of the song, the smallest parts, nearly the smallest parts. And after, for example, 16 bars, you in most of the cases have a hard change. I will show you all this later with these examples. And within each of these sections, the elements can consist of 1, 2, 4, or 8 bar repeating phrases. Which means that after, for example, 1 or 4 bars, there are some different things. And elements tend to be changed every 4 or 8 bars. The radical changes are after 16 bars and the slighter changes after, for example, 4 or 8 bars. When you start arranging, I can say to you that, or I would give you the advice that you start arranging with the overall structure to have a nice basis. This means before you start to work in detail, you should, for example, arrange or make the main part broadly, then you make the break, and then you think about the second main part, and at the end you make the outro and the intro. And after this, after you have this broad thing, this basis, you can go into smaller blocks. For example, let's say you made the main part very broadly, let's say it's 16 bars, and then you think, okay, the first 8 bars will be like this, and after this 8 bars I can add a hi-hat or change the melody or something. As you can see, you go from broad to very specific, and this is how I do it in most of the cases. What else to say? Well, you can do this until you reach the 1 bar region, where you can add interesting details in some places, in some one bars, for example. Okay, this was it as an introduction or second introduction. Let's talk about the intro. Okay, in the intro, in most of the times, you only have drums. This is very typical for electronic music, that you try to produce your track DJ friendly because he wants to mix this track in, especially in extended mixes or club mixes. You do it like this, and there aren't many changes at the beginning. It starts very monotonic, you know what I mean? There are some rules that can be applied. For example, you don't have the drums at the beginning like they are later on. So this means that you, for example, can use, let's say, a filter, for example, a low cut or a high cut filter to introduce the drums. You can use less drums and percussion sounds, which means that you only have a kick and a snare, but don't add other percussion sounds. These sounds you can then add in the main part or break, for example. Or you can use other drum samples which aren't that hard as used in the main part. And my tip, what I do quite often, is that I don't introduce the hi-hat at the beginning, because the hi-hat adds some space in the high end, and this is used in my tracks more in the main part. Anything else to say? Well, you can, for example, also introduce, except the drums, you can also introduce some of the main sounds for smoother transitions. How can you do this? You can, for example, filter your sounds in. Or another way, another possibility which I recognized, which I do very often, is that I only use some steps by raising some of the MIDI notes. For example, let's say you have a bass sound and you just start with a C, and afterwards in the main part you start with a real melody, C, D, E, for example. And you can also create smaller loop regions. Let's say, well, you have, in the main part you have 8 bars, but at the start you only use the first part of the main part, let's say the first bar. You will see what I mean later on. Well, the intro all in all should be, let's say, 16 to 32 bars. And now I will show you this by these 3 examples. So we start with the first one, and while listening to this, I'll comment what has been done specifically in this track. Okay, the first one, banana split. Okay, as you can hear, very typical. What I said, kick, snare, hi-hat. Very monotonic. Okay, the first 8 bars are passed. Now you can hear that the guy adds some slight percussions. And I'm pretty sure that after these 8 bars, something new starts. Okay, the transition comes. And now you can hear the mix intro is over. He starts to add the first melodies, which is in this part more the background sounds, like an arpeggiator. And now he is filtering in the main sound. This is what I also told you. You can filter in your main sound. That doesn't happen much more. Now the transition. And now there's coming a bass sound. And that's actually the intro. That really, after the next 8 bars, it starts to get into the main part. Okay, the second one depends on you. It's from the Deep label. As you can see, I'm into progressive house. Okay, let's listen to this one. What do we have here? Kick, snare, more percussions already at the beginning, a shaker, and something else, something like an open hi-hat. And you already have an arpeggiator, melodies. And now there's a bass sound, but only very short. Dim, dim, dim. And it ends. As you can hear, there's just one bar, and now the sound of the bass isn't one bar anymore. This was one bar, and now it extends to the usual 4-bar section as used in the main part. And this is still the intro. He now puts away some sounds. The kick will be filtered out. The shakers are away. And now, as you can see here, the end, it starts to get into the main part. Okay. As I already described, this is quite untypical that he already uses melodies, but I think this is something like a radio edit where they cut it away at the beginning. Okay, the last one is made by me, so that you see what I'm doing. Okay, another proggy track. Okay, what did I do? As you can hear, in this case I used a filter. I think that this isn't used very often. I don't hear this quite often. No kick. And now, after 8 bars, I introduced a kick and some more percussions to make it more interesting, which I also use in the main part. And now the mix intro is over. What I'm doing now, transition. Okay, the filter is away. And this is to make smooth transitions. At the beginning you have a filter and then you fade it out. As you can hear now, there is the synth coming, which I'm using in the main part. And this is also a monotonic one. Now I'm adding an arpeggiator. The synth sound right now isn't the main part sound. It's only the 1-bar loop. And now you can hear the full synth sound. There. This is the real sound. So I was actually looping the first half of the sound to make an introduction of this sound. And I also introduce it by fading the volume in. You can always work in the introduction with fading ins. I don't know how to describe it. You can fade in by turning the volume up, by filtering in from high to low or from low to high, by, well, these are the two most typical ones, or by, for example, beginning with a very high reverb and then getting lower and lower with the reverb. There are a lot of ways like as you can do it. So stay creative. This is the most important thing, but these are some guidelines for the intro. And in the next section we will talk about the let me see, I think, okay, we do the break. Yeah, let's do the break. This is logical. Okay, stay creative, and I hope that you tune in for the next lesson. Bye bye, it's Klangrausch. See ya.